Hello, all. The Irrational Skeptic here, and I wanted to make a video continuing the new series I started called Enlightenment Talks. And basically, this series is supposed to be centered upon how to better the world. It's a kind of more humanitarian-esque type of mission. And what I try to do in these kinds of videos is try and use a logical framework as well as trying to appeal to people's empathy in a sense in order to give them all reasons for adopting a stance that is imbued more with empathy towards others. And so today's video is going to be titled The Oneness of All, or rather, the case for universal consciousness. And so I would like to start by first describing the human body. So every single individual has a body. And if you care enough for yourself, you go to the bathroom, you take a shower, you clean yourself, you get a haircut. I know not everybody does that, but to at least a certain extent, people usually take care of themselves, whether it is the most basics of taking care of themselves. So you will find that even the most careless person at least eats, make sure to eat every day. And of course, no matter what other vices they may have, they usually make sure to eat, usually make sure to drink water, and they see onto themselves as that basic necessity, that instinct to feed themselves is very grounded. And when people eat, they don't think that necessarily anything special is happening. They are just feeding their body. Maybe one day you have a very nice meal or a very delicious meal and you're like, oh my god, this is the most delicious thing ever. Or you go to a restaurant and the chef makes you the best dessert and you just love it. So these are special cases of feeding, but the most basic one is just making sure when you're hungry there's food in your belly. And so another simple example would be if you were walking down the road and you stepped on a piece of wood and you got a splinter in your foot. You would say ouch or something like that, and then you would likely bend down, go to the splinter and pull it out and throw it away, and probably maybe put a band-aid on it if you're more health conscious. I'm sure when people were younger, they had their parents do something like that for them, so I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And so the reason I start with this example is to say that for your own human body, the way you view your human body is something that you need to protect, something that you need to keep alive, something that you need to treat with some amount of care, some people more so than others, but to varying degrees, everyone tries to maintain their life. And so I would now like to extend this a little bit further and get a little bit abstract. So, each person in the world usually refers to themselves as I when they're talking in a sentence. So, I want to go to school. I want to get some food. I want to do this or that. I want to become the richest man in the universe, in the multiverse even. But anyways, for the most part, people refer to themselves as I in any sentence. And what I would like people to realize is that this same I, which you refer to yourself as, everybody else refers to themselves as that I. Although when they are speaking of that I, they are speaking about someone different than yourself. And you would never imagine, but we are all using the exact same word to identify ourselves, I, because that consciousness that knows that I am is what it is. I am, and I will quote the Bible here, I am that I am. I am that I am. Just look at this for a moment. Stopping at the I am and then having the next person next to you, I am, someone else's I am, but they are all I. And I'm pushing for this because the moment that everyone in the world starts to realize, and this is just speaking about humans, to a certain extent, I would want to extend this to all life, but I just want to use humans for a simple case. We can get to animals and plants and rocks even later. But human beings all recognizing that they are all the same I to which they refer to would start to have a different sense about the world. The thing is that when you were born, and I found this in most scientific articles concerning the development of children's psychology, but basically when you're a baby, you don't have any delineation between the environment and yourself. It is often found that babies even sometimes think that they can move things just by their will, just by crying about it. They see things happening. And so a baby cries, the bottle comes, laughs, they pat him on the back. So there's some actions taking place in the environment that the baby is recognizing as being themselves. And when they say that they don't have any recognition between who they are and who other people are, it is not just that boundary. It is also the boundary between them and the floor and them and the ocean in front of them. If they were at a beach, they don't draw that distinction. And so I would like to turn a little bit back as well, going back to Bible again, because the Bible is a book of much wisdom, actually, when you really think about it. And Jesus has always told people to be like little children. He doesn't go to the level of a baby maybe, but he is returning to a time where children have more of an innocent look at life, and they don't necessarily draw very strong distinctions. I believe what he's trying to point out here is that the actual formation of people's egos tends to happen as you advance further in life. And so what do I mean? I mean, you, at a certain age, you go to school, you are taught that you are from X, Y, or Z country. You are then taught that you are from this community. You are taught that Bob or Jeffrey is able to have 3 pairs of sneakers because his parents are richer, and you can only have 1 pair of sneakers because yours aren't. And you start drawing these type of distinctions between yourself and the world, and not just yourself and the world, between other people in the world and other people. So you now have this gradient being formed, in that from Jeffrey to you is one gradient if you put it along the class status, or you can make other type of statuses. You can have tall, short, this person is older, and you start making these groupings of how the world works and how everything is different than you. And so but before this happens, and that's why I take it back to even being a child, a baby, is that this non-difference between yourself and the world is a kind of consciousness. It's a conscious state. How do I know it's a conscious state? Because we've had it before. And it might surprise you, but this actual conscious state is of a higher conscious state than one you descend into by making delineations. And don't get me confused. Don't confuse what I'm saying. Delineations are good. It is good that we have processes by which we can identify the world, segment the world, create things. That's how the scientific method works. We have to categorize things. But we don't necessarily have to do that towards other living beings. You see, you don't have to treat everything as if it's something to be dissected, or something to separate, and something to categorize. You can stop at categorizing the atoms or the chemicals in the periodic table, the compounds in the periodic table, the elements in the periodic table, whatever you may have. But what I'm really saying here is that moving or connecting to the first analogy that I made about the human body, if we were all seeing ourselves as a similar consciousness, as all being the I that I talk about is the I that you talk about. And now, what happens if I find that you are hungry? Well, luckily, humans have this awareness and tool built into them. Even after they begin this separation of the ego, they still have inbuilt called empathy, meaning that there's a neural pathway, so to speak, between you and me and him and her. And the reason this neural pathway exists is in the connections of the human species, and that's or of life in general, depending how far your empathic abilities go. But you'd have to realize that if I find that you're hungry, I will feed you. And even to the, like I said, to the extent where, yes, maybe I don't even eat every day, someone might say. So how would I feed someone else? Well, to the extent that you're aware of their internal state, they're really hungry, you would feed them. Oh, they really need a shelter. You would build a house for them. And more hands are better than one. So it is not to say that one person should do all this. At the same time, if all hands saw themselves as one person, the amount of power and equity we would create in the world would be astonishing. Because it is not to say that we should push all the responsibility onto only a few people. It is that we should all bear the responsibility of being a human species and treating ourselves as one body, as one I, as one consciousness. And so the case for universal consciousness becomes that once we start to destroy these lines and destroy these segmentations between one another, I would be just as concerned as for you stepping on a flint or a piece of wood, and me stepping on a piece of wood and getting hurt, I will be just as concerned for person X or Y turning into an alcoholic as I would be concerned for myself turning into one. And so the main point here is really that universal consciousness ends up being great for everybody, and the distinctions being made through the ego usually creates a situation where there has to be a declining gradient. So where you have the super most wealthy person in the world, you have to have the super most poor person in the world, because if not, you can't have those gradients and you can't maintain those ego statuses of this person is great, this person is not great, this person is in the middle, this person is not so much. You won't have that without the ego. And it is not that we should have no ego whatsoever, although that would be great, but it's more to say that this should be used for what it's meant to be used for. So you can still be a scientist, you can still be an engineer, but you would be doing these things for the sake that you seem to have some affinity for those subjects, and you seem to have some affinity for those kinds of things. They're rewarding in and of themselves, but not that they should be attached to some kind of super extrinsic reward, because this rewarding mechanism is another one which is formed through childhood. It's another one that, oh, if you do X, Y, or Z, you get 3 cookies. If you do A, B, C, X, Y, and Z, you get 10 cookies. And so people have now built within their minds that, okay, in order to get 10 cookies, I need to do this, this, and that. And then that's how you have all these Microsofts and Apples of the world. And it's not to say that technology is bad. It is just to say that we can still have all these things. There are still people that do the research. There are still people that are engineers, And I'm just trying to say this in all basic language that I feel like everyone would understand, I feel like people can get this, and that's kind of why I'm just talking like this, like you're my friend or my pals, because yeah, we're all in this together, aren't we? And so please, I am advocating for universal consciousness. I would like people that watch this to just show an act of empathy to another person. Try and see yourself as being in their shoes and what you would want them to do for you. And start small, start from your brothers, sisters, parents, your friends. Start small, but I believe that these small, minute changes literally affect the entire world, literally affect the entire consciousness. And so I feel like I'm doing my part here in trying to get people to see from a logical standpoint why a universal consciousness makes sense. Recapping, we are all I. You call yourself I call myself I. So I am you, you are me, he is her, she is him. We need to start getting into this state of mind. And that will be it for now. I will probably continue with this Enlightenment Talk series. I will have other topics that I'll be going into, but this is going to be episode 2 of that series. So I'll see you guys next time. The Irrational Skeptic signing off.